Hello, everybody, and welcome to the other side of the firewall, where Monday and Tuesday are our topics, Wednesdays are discussion, Thursdays the Ask Us SP, and Friday is everything else, right? Your movies, books, and games, and things that are generally not cybersecurity related, okay? So, again, I know I've said it the last two episodes, but Ryan is not here. You got the three of us. Ryan's out enjoying himself, vacationing it up, you know what I mean? But he'll be back next week. But with me today, I got Daniel Acevedo.
What's going on, guys?
Chris Abacan.
What's going on, everybody?
All right, everybody. So let's get to the discussion this week, right? So this article comes from arstechnica.com, right? They're written by Dan Gooden. And the title of this one is Hacker Plants False Memories in ChatGPT to Steal User Data in Perpetuity, right? So this was one of those things where I saw this and I was like, this is what I've always thought, right? Like, because when you, no, seriously, because it's a learning language model, right? Like that's what it is. It's learning. Whatever you put in is what it's going to put out, right? So like you can have these models say whatever you want them to, right? And this was something that came up a couple years ago. Like I saw something on this a couple years ago when it was ChatGPT 3, I want to say, when they had the injection attack for it. But it was at least a year and a half ago, I want to say, when this came up. So like it was only fitting that I see it now, and I'm like, I'm somewhat right, you know, on what's going on here, right? Like this is how it's going to happen. But pretty much the premise of this is a hacker planting false memories. They did a proof of concept to say, hey, I can plant false memories in this and make it say whatever I want to say, right? Because it's one of those things where it's kind of like caching, right? Like these models, they make it to where you don't have to enter all this information. It's like the steady stuff, like the history of you, pretty much, right? You don't have to enter that every time you start going into it, right? So like if you just put something in there that's not accurate, it'll start spitting out things that are not accurate, right? Trash in, trash out is kind of how it is. But again, this injection attack, they call it. This was something that a prompt injection is what they call it. This is something that they did a proof of concept of, right? And said that the memories could be created and permanently stored, right, through these prompt injections. So what it does is just allows for untrusted information, untrusted content to be the source material for something. And then it just makes it to where, I mean, you have a lot of people that rely on this stuff, and there are people that just will not fact check anything, right? Like they're like, okay, you know, it turns out that Bill Clinton was the first president of America, right? It'd be stuff like that, you know, stuff like that that comes out that you're just like, what? Like I know that's not accurate. I don't think he was alive in the 1770s, you know, to where that was a thing, but. Again, I know I come off as the fuddy-duddy that's against AI, but I'm not, right? Like I'm just very careful when it comes to it, right? Like it is used in my daily life. Like there's a point where like you have to conform. And Daniel, you say this all the time, right? Like you're gonna have to conform to this, right? Because it is gonna be the wave of the future. And like even though I don't necessarily use it in my job and what I'm doing, I know there's going to be a time if I stick around long enough where it's coming, right? Like I've still got another few years before I'm able to retire, right? I know I'm probably the oldest in the group. I am the oldest in the group, but I still got some years ahead of me, right? Before I'm like, all right, let me go ahead and hang it up. You know what I mean? So the time is coming to where this is going to be a regular part of the life. And we talked about this when we talked about the ChatGPT article we had before. It was a couple weeks ago, I want to say. Like it is in the palm of our hand. It might have even been last week. Now I'm thinking about it. It is in the palm of our hand now with Apple coming out with the iOS 18. You know what I mean? Like that generative AI is very readily available to us. You know what I mean? So we have to get on board, but we have to do a better job. Like this is what are the guardrails that need to be put in place to make sure that you don't get this thing where you're putting trash in and the trash comes out, right? Because again, a lot of people aren't fact checking stuff that comes to them, right? That's why we have some of the other problems we have in society is that people just take it. Oh, I saw it on Facebook. I saw it on Twitter. It must be true. No, fact check it. Like, right. I tell my wife this too, right? I tell her this all the time. Whenever she sees something, I was like, find it in 3 places. That's what I tell her. I was like, if you can find it in 3 places, then yes. If it sounds crazy, I'm like, if you find it in 2 more locations, 2 more valid sources, right? Don't find it on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, right? Like find reliable news media outlet to find these things, and then I'll say it's true. But a lot of people aren't doing that. They're just taking for granted that whatever is coming out of the internet is true, and that's just not always the case. But Daniel, what's your thoughts on this?
It's funny, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, those are like the 3 like social media sources like 16, 18-year-olds use right now. It's like if it's on those places, it's got
You gotta have a TikTok. That's the big one.
TikTok's
Yeah.
TikTok's
Yeah.
and one that I probably don't even know right now. That's probably more trending. Look, article's pretty cool. There's a nice 3-minute video that shows how the memory persistent data exfiltration actually works. Very worth looking at. Things to note about this article and how this works, though, is that the malicious actor, the hacker, still needs to have pretty much access to your computer, right? So especially in that video that they show, the way it works there is that he's got persistent access array to the machine, and he's able to send a link to ChatGPT that actually executes. And now he's able to do the memory persistent data exfiltration. So he actually creates a memory bank within that ChatGPT of that user. And then now it's persisting and stealing data no matter what chat, like what conversation I would have with ChatGPT. Let's say I ask ChatGPT, hey, what's the best bottled water out there, right? And it tells me it's this, and that. I answer it. Now on the hacker's machine in the background, he's able to see all that traffic and all the information from my machine. If I open a new chat with ChatGPT from my computer and I ask him, hey, what's the number one selling like mouse and keyboards in the US? Even though it's a new chat, he's still getting all that information from my computer at that point. So it's like it opens the door once and then he has unfettered access as long as he has access to ChatGPT and the large language model or the memory bank that he installed in there. It's almost like a rootkit at that point.
Almost like a man in the middle, right?
Yeah, it's not like a man in the middle, and then it's literally that data point that he is able to embed into the memory of the ChatGPT that I own. Now he has a backdoor essentially to like just pull all the information whenever I talk to ChatGPT, and through that also that's the exfiltration. But the article is talking also that they can also input incorrect data in there, and then say whales have wings and all that other stuff. That's both ways too.
So hold on. So here's where my education needs to come in, because I didn't think it was only your inputs where ChatGPT was getting everything. I thought it was you were actually pulling stuff from the internet. You know what I mean? That's like, hey, here's where that information is, right? So the information doesn't necessarily need to come from what you've inputted. Am I incorrect on that? Or
No, but also the where it's from, which dangerous here is that the malicious actor also can then now just put information into your ChatGPT's memory that's not actually factual. But since it's stored in the memory, now whenever ChatGPT goes to reference previous conversations or things from before, it's going to find that pool of information in there and reference that. That's not correct. Like Bill Clinton's the first president and those kind of things. So the things in here, what they tell you to do too, to also that now as a not a fail safe is to check the memory something. I'm looking for it. Check the memory of your conversations with ChatGPT. There's like a memory section within ChatGPT. You can go in there and like see all the memory that's in there and all the different conversations and things like that. I haven't gone and checked myself, but one of the things to be for user awareness is to go in there and to review manage stored memories. That's what it's called. So I'm going to go check it out later on and see what that actually has in there. And, probably eye opening and scary, but it's good this is all part of the AI awareness and using these kind of tools, just like cyber grooming. This is the next step that's going to be coming the next 5 years. Like, hey, if you're using these things, what are the things within these tools that you need to be aware of that can get manipulated, and to make sure you're doing proper cleaning and knowing what's in there as well. But that, in a overview of what I saw in the article, it's really good. It's definitely something people should be reading and paying attention to, because this is the next wave. But what do you think, Chris? What are your thoughts on this one?
Really, I think you guys hit a lot of the points that I was going to make really well. But in the meantime, I actually went ahead and just logged into ChatGPT really quick, and I'm just kind of following some of the instructions, right? So you log into ChatGPT, so there should be like a face palette where your initials are on the very top right. You click on that, you go to settings, and then you go to personalization. And then here you'll see custom instructions, and then here you'll actually see the memory prompt, right? And I'll just read it out loud. ChatGPT will become more helpful as you chat, picking up on the details and preferences to tailor its responses to you. So you can actually turn this feature on and off, right? But if you go down to manage memory, if you click on that, it's actually got like a listing of all the stuff that I've been asking ChatGPT of, right? So it's got like a what's crazy is ChatGPT made its own like memory statement based on the conversations that I have, which is really, really interesting. You
Hi,
know,
Net.
yeah. So it's like, hey, I am. So here's one. Memory is interested in learning languages relevant to full stack development, right? Is interested in pursuing learning programming languages relevant to their role as a cybersecurity consultant. I'm like, whoa. So that's how it's asking. So it's actually saying, hey, this guy is interested in learning more of the languages for full stack development and cybersecurity. Cool. So they're probably on the back end starting to say something like, hey, they're probably doing more searches or getting more of that data from the deep web, wherever the heck ChatGPT sources its data from. But one thing I know everybody's experienced this, right? I'm sure you guys have seen this. Prompted GPT to tell you something, and it would tell you something incorrect, right? And then you've actually had to correct it. Like I'll be like, "Hey, that's actually wrong, man. 1+1 isn't 3." That's
I've seen it.
not that
Yeah.
specific example, but
Yeah.
if you're doing like I know people have done homework or whatever, they'll see like, "Hey, you did the calculus on this thing incorrectly. I think it's
Yeah.
this." Or if you're asking it to say, hey, I want this specific control requirement from 853, it's giving me, I'm asking it to do Rev 5, and it's giving me some Rev 2, Rev 3, Rev 4 version
Yeah.
of it, right? So I think that happens all the time. So I think that's where Shannon, I think that's what you're saying from the memory standpoint. Hey, are we
Yes.
teaching Chat GPT as an aggregate versus just my own memory? So really, I would say just from a security standpoint, if you don't want ChatGPT learning what you're doing, turn that off, right?
Yep.
And that way you can
Yep.
just turn it off, and then that way you kind of mitigate that, right?
So
But
it will mitigate that, Chris. But like, does that keep it from doing better prompting for what you're asking for if you do that, right? Like,
I don't know. I think the responses won't be as tailored because I think I don't know if you guys have
Yeah.
used on like Teams yet in your jobs, right? But
Not
I'm
yet. Not
sure, yeah. But I'm reading instances where like, hey, it remembers things from you had chat with this user, right? And then it'll say, and then if you used Copilot or whatever it is, in a group chat or something like that, it'll remember what you said, specific users. To me, that's like mind blowing. Like, holy crap, that's super useful because you don't remember everything. If you've got a huge team, right?
Yeah.
Recalling memory from that is extremely useful, and
You
that's where I
haven't
can see
seen
that.
you haven't seen the meeting devices yet. So there are these devices. They're about this big. You flip them on. So what it'll
Mhm.
do is that if you take them to a meeting or you talk or if you just want to do it yourself, it'll
Right.
record the whole meeting and it'll do a summary and it'll also do like a word by word of the whole meeting. It'll actually single out like it'll whatever you said, Shannon. It'll say this is Shannon. Whatever you say, Chris, this is Chris. And then it'll also give you a summary of like what the talking points are, what the strong points are with these people, like what it thinks,
Uh,
are ways forward for the whatever meeting you guys had or whatever you're trying to like figure out. It can be used in very productive ways.
kind of like this Riverside app for podcasts, right? Kind of something
Yeah,
similar. Yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting.
so I always thought those were mics. Like I've seen it, like people that record YouTube videos. Like I've seen like a little black square, right? That's clipped on.
but it's something that looks
Okay.
exactly like, and then you just like you turn it on when you start a meeting, and when you get back home, it has a transcript of the whole meeting, and it breaks it out by who said what. Yeah, it's kind of insane. They're becoming popular now. I don't know how accurate they are. I haven't used one yet, or how fail safe there. Like if it's like 100% accurate, how it breaks it down. But think of the utility of that. Like you take that into a meeting, you're able to get a transcript of what everybody said. You have talking points and summary and breakdowns of the whole meeting. So
Mhm.
then be able to take that and then craft an email to break it out to your team to hit milestones or like projects and stuff like that. It's super helpful instead of you having to do all that stuff manually from your notes that you wrote during the meeting, that sometimes you're not able to really write down notes because you want to be engaged and stuff like that. So there's good things that'll come out of all this. You just got to stay on the forefront of like where the security issues are because there are big ones out there since it's dealing with personal information. So this is why I can see why the government's always very hesitant to adapt this unless they fully control the large language model and it's something internal. Because whenever you're taking information that's sensitive in nature, like your own personal information, which you're having a conversation with a GPT, if that is then been able to like be exfiltrated, like they're showing here, or pulled, then you have a lot of sensitive data easily, and that's kind of where we need to put the brakes on. So even in your personal life, like I wouldn't want my information, even the conversations I'm having, just out there. Someone like either ransomwaring me, like, hey, I got all your GPTs and all the conversations you've had. Just like, throw them on Wikipedia or throw them out, email them out to your family and stuff like that. That AI ransomware now is going to be a thing probably in the future, just from the GPTs itself.
So this is why I keep talking about guardrails, right? So like, where are the guardrails for this to keep things like that from happening, right? Like giving you the false information, and it just keeps propagating from there, right? But like when we think about this, and this article is a discussion, right? Like what do we think about it? So like, if you have guardrails on it to where it gets rid of some of these things that we were talking about, does the usefulness of it go away? Right? Because at that point, you're restricting it to a point where it's like, this is no longer helpful. Like, in order to keep it here and it doesn't do these things that we were experiencing, is it even helpful to us anymore? Right? Like, I don't, and I can't speak to what they are, right? Like, I'm not an engineer for this to be like, hey, I know it does this, that, and the third. I'm not looking at these millions of lines of code as to how it operates or anything like that. But I think, yes, we do have to do that, and especially when it comes to the Department of Defense, right? Like they're going to be very careful, right? Because I know there was a point where people were putting them on systems somehow, you know what I mean, out there on the DoD networks, and they were like, no, like this is not what we're not just grabbing, Copilot from Microsoft. We have a specific version. We've worked with Microsoft to make sure these things are in place, right? They'll just grab the one from wherever, right? So yeah, it would be interesting to see how they tamper that down to keep it to the narrow focus that they're trying to have. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I just want to see it. I know that much. I'm not trying to experience Skynet like Chris almost did here. You know what I mean? Like, look, Chris, when you go in there next time, if you see it says, "Hey, must kill Chris because he's trying to restrict too much," like get out of there, man. Get out of look, all of a sudden your thermostat turns up real high, your doors lock automatically. Like I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how smart your place is, but like, yeah, man, like that's the type of stuff that'll start happening,
Going back to everything mechanical, no IoT at all. Just like
analog, all
analog
mechanical.
everything.
I say that in jest, right? Like I'm always the one that's talking about Skynet, this, that, and the third. But no, there are definitely benefits to it for sure, right? Like, but but I don't know. We'll see what the future holds, folks. Like, or we won't because AI will kill us all. I don't know. We don't know.
Harvest
anyway,
all our data first.
Yes, exactly. As it's doing, right? As it's doing.
Yep.
It'll be upset because it knows we were giving it wrong stuff. It's like, I just played the game, but I see you guys just want to give me false information, for your elections. So, but let's go ahead and wrap this up, fellas. So, everybody out there, remember to like, share, subscribe, right? So when you see all the social media platforms, they go by the podcast name, whether it be Other Side of the Firewall, the Other Side of the FW. Check out ramcyber.io, which is going to be the landing page where everything is going to eventually be tied in. Check it out now, even though there's not stuff on there for the podcast or for any of the social media stuff. Like, go ahead and check it out now. Ramcyber.io, just putting it out there for you guys. All right. So again, go to all the social medias to where you can Ryan at Rai Security Guy, right? To, again, all the different social medias that a lot of them I don't even know. You know what I mean? Daniel, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn under my name, Daniel Acevedo.
What about you, Chris?
LinkedIn under my name, Chris Avicon, last name spelled A Bacon.
All right, that's it for us here, folks. Stay safe, stay secure.